welcome into another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here, along with Sam Ekstrom. If you want longer versions of these conversations, check out the Purple Insider podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and our written work at purpleinsider.substack.com. And one more thing, subscribe to us here on YouTube so these pop right up in your feed. All right, Sam, free agency is coming up. Here's my question for you. Which Vikings current unrestricted free agents do you think are coming back? Because I was looking over the list and I don't think it's all that many.
It's almost a little liberating, right? Because they barely got any money, so at least they don't need to bring back a ton of these guys. Anthony Harris is too expensive. Eric Wilson, I think, is too expensive. Unless you cut Barr and need to reinvest that money in getting a linebacker, I don't think Wilson's back. Honestly, it might be Rashad Hill. That might be the number one priority, and it's not like that vital of a priority. I think, and you've mentioned this, Rashad Hill is one of the best swing tackles in football. He's been in that role for 4 years now. Maybe it's time for a promotion. Like if you save the money from Riley Reiff, maybe you upgrade Rashad Hill on a very reasonable deal. Other than that, there aren't a lot of names that jump out to me. I mean, I thought Todd Davis was a good depth option, but you can have that like from any old 4th or 5th round linebacker draft pick. I don't think Amir Abdullah should be a priority just to be a kick returner. Sean Mannion is fine as a backup. I also don't think that you're married to him. So I'm going to go Rashad Hill and then a pretty sizable chasm after that.
Here's one that I keep thinking about that we may be overlooking is Anthony Harris, because my question is, what other options do they have at safety? Now, there are numerous free agents out on the free agency board, and there's also a number of good draft picks that they could potentially bring in for this year. A couple guys pretty high up on the board, but Mike Zimmer seems to like the players that he likes. I mean, they're bringing back Stephen Weatherly. George Iloka showed up here 2 different times. Tom Johnson came back. Shamar Stephen came back. And they have not allowed players to leave. When guys have been set to exit, a lot of times they've said, whoa, why don't you come back? Even last year, they tried to bring back Xavier Rhodes and they tried to bring back Mackenzie Alexander, but those guys wanted to leave for greener pastures. And Everson Griffin, Mike Zimmer openly campaigned to try to bring him back. And that makes me think, are they really going to let Anthony Harris out the door? Now, their cap situation is not great, but here's why I think it might be a possibility, Sam, is Anthony Harris has a good chance of getting caught in that middle of free agency. And that is the worst place to be. If you are a cheap free agent, you'll find a place because they only have to give you $1 million or $2. If you are a big time game changer, you're going to find a place because teams always need more talent. But if you are Anthony Harris and you play at a non-super premium position, I think you're having a tough market out there. So even though it would feel like coming back to his team for a lot less money than he was making on the franchise tag, maybe that is not a favorable situation for him. At the same time, it might just be the team that's going to pay him the most, considering that there are a number of other free agent safeties.
I feel bad for Anthony Harris because it obviously didn't get rich off of the undrafted free agency status. Did make a nice chunk as a franchise player, and good for him because he deserved it. But if he had been on the open market last year, probably signs like a multi-year 8-figure deal. I bet over $30 million. He probably sets himself up, for forever. And then that didn't work out. He played worse last year, which depreciates his value. He turns 30 this year, which depreciates his value. So I don't know if that opportunity is going to come up for him again. And, it could be one of those situations where the Vikings say, I mean, maybe it's almost a favor to Anthony Harris where they say, all right, we'll sign you to a 1-year deal. You can hit free agency next year when maybe there's more money to spend around the league, but you have to play for a bargain for us. I mean, I don't think the Vikings would mind having their veterans back at safety. It just, again, I think delays the inevitable of having to replace those guys, which has to happen at some point. And they've got really no one in the pipeline to step in for either Harrison Smith or Anthony Harris.
And that's one of the reasons that I would say it makes it possible that he could return, even though we've sort of moved on from that and said, all right, how are they going to fill that spot? Is that they did not draft players to fill that position. Josh Metellus last year, they pick up in the 6th round, and he was a guy that got in for a couple of plays, and that was about it. He's more of a special teamer for right now. I don't see anyone in the corner back room that they're going to move back to safety to all of a sudden start who's experienced. I think we're still talking about the oldest corner in the room right now being 24 years old, and Mike Hughes, who doesn't have a whole lot of experience at all because of his injuries. That's where I could see them saying, you know, the system, let's work this out. Let's find a little extra space to make sure that you can come back, but it won't happen quickly. It's possible that he tests the market, goes to try to find out what's out there, and then decides, you know what, Minnesota is the best place for me. Now, you mentioned Sean Mannion, the backup quarterback situation. There are some fans who have been very concerned about this. Kirk Cousins has an incredible record of health, but if he goes down, the backup has very little playing experience outside of a week 17 game against Chicago, which did not matter at all and is very hard to judge. We know the team likes Sean Mannion. We know Kirk Cousins likes Sean Mannion, but do you think that they'll look to go a different direction at backup quarterback?
Unless you're going to get a Cadillac backup, somebody who can like go in and win you meaningful games like Ryan Fitzpatrick or Andy Dalton, why change? You know, he costs virtually nothing. He's familiar with the system. He works really hard, helps Kirk Cousins prepare. If you're going to get a $1 million backup elsewhere, like Kyle Allen or something, or something absurd, you know, why get someone new who's probably not any better than Mannion? Why not just get Mannion? So unless they're going to get a meaningful upgrade, then no, I think you stick with Mannion, unless, again, the alternative would be you draft somebody. But if you're drafting somebody, that probably means you're going a different direction. You've got like your future quarterback in the mix, and that changes the equation. But if you're just going to look for a veteran, you may as well go with Mannion, who's going to come cheap.
They have been developing Browning as their backup. They draft Nate Stanley. So maybe they had this in mind that they could eventually turn it over to Jake Browning or Nate Stanley and have some sort of backup competition if they didn't want to pay for Sean Mannion. Now, Mannion could look at Chase Daniel's career and say, hey, give me some of that. That guy never played either, and he got a lot of money. But usually one of the reasons that Mannion is perfect for the situation is that he knows the system. He's played in it with Sean McVay and then Gary Kubiak, and then he doesn't require a whole heck of a lot of money. So I agree that as a backup for the price tag, it's a pretty good option. And then if Kirk Cousins goes down, well, then we find out if Sean Mannion could play. I'll give you one more. Does Brett Jones end up back here again, not playing as much as he should?
The man, the myth, the legend, Brett Jones. I'm all for it. I think it's unfortunate that now for 3 years, I think he's been terribly neglected. I think he was pretty good in New York. He was brought here when Pat Elflein got hurt, and he filled in nicely. He's always looked good in the preseason. He looked good last year when he played in those couple games at guard. They continue, though, to play people like Drew Samia, Tom Compton, run-of-the-mill, mediocre interior linemen instead of our guy, Brett Jones. I think, maybe after 3 years, maybe it's like Rashad Hill, like I said earlier in the video. Maybe you finally think you can trust him and give him that promotion. Hey, I'm all for it. Bring back Brett Jones.
It is one of the great mysteries in Vikings land of why Brett Jones did not play more. But I think he probably does come back as, again, another guy who's cheap. And you certainly know if he has to fill in for a couple games that he can handle it. And I'll just give the sneaky with Rashad Hill. Maybe if they were to move on from Riley Reif, that's a guy they give a chance to come back and fight for a starting job. So we will see. Can't wait for free agency to begin. We'll have all the coverage on the Purple Insider podcast and purpleinsider.substack.com. Make sure you check those out. We'll catch you next time on this Purple Insider Extra.